Welcome back to the Be Ruthless Show. I'm your host, Sam Ruth, and joining me today is Jen Holm, the police social worker coordinator for the Traverse City Police Department. She's a dual licensed master social worker with additional credentials in sign language interpreting and teaching. Her previous experience with both macro and clinical social work impacts her systemic and individual approaches to social work services. She developed and now facilitates the Traverse City PD Resilience Program. The goal of her position is to reduce law enforcement calls on vulnerable populations by interrupting the cycle of arrest and addiction through care coordination and reduction of community barriers. Thank you so much for being here and everything you do.
Thank you, Sam. It's nice to be here.
We have been dealing with a lot in the world, in our community, and tell us about yourself a little bit before we get into the resilience program.
Sure. It is. It's a tough world that we live in a little bit. My name is Jen Holm. I am the police social worker coordinator for the Traverse City Police Department. I've been working there since 2022. Prior to that, I worked in hospice, and prior to that, I was a sign language teacher.
Another extremely important aspect of this world that isn't discussed. I love that. How many calls are you on where sign language is needed?
Not many. My roles are really distinct. So, as an interpreter, I have a basic Michigan-based certification. So, I'm able to do low-level events and things where there's low risk. But, at the police department, that would require a higher level of interpreting. So, I am not an interpreter for the police department. I can, talk to people in sign language and kind of help them with the process of acquiring an interpreter, but it's really not a part of my role at the police department.
I was on a Zoom call during COVID with a bunch, and the sound went, everything went mute. And we had somebody who knew sign language who was able to communicate with some people, but not everyone. And it's a skill that is overlooked, under discussed, and important. So, especially when you're dealing with crisis, people who are panicky and overwhelmed, and we just don't understand body language.
Yeah, and I think some of those same skills become really impactful in this work because being able to communicate with folks, even across language barriers, also being able to bridge various communities. When you think about it as an interpreter, you're taking individuals who know sign language and individuals who don't, right? And trying to get them to have the same message back and forth. The same can be true when you're working with for example, police and vulnerable populations. Sometimes those folks don't speak the same language. So getting everybody to be in a room together, to understand, to hear me out, know people's stories can be very impactful.
That's why our relationships are so important. I see police and I have open arms. I don't think that's many of the world's reaction. There's fear. So how we work together, how we can disarm people's fear, aggression. Talk about the resilience program, please.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The resilience program was developed when I started in 2022. My program has started with a grant, and that grant required us to establish a quick response team. Traditionally, QRTs focus on overdose response. And so between 24 and 72 hours after an overdose, people would go and they would support individuals. My dog might bark. They would support individuals who have overdosed in the community, provide them linkage to care and harm reduction resources, and really try to support them throughout those first moments after an overdose. As we were developing our program, that felt too late. So what we did instead, in addition to overdose response, was opened up the eligibility criteria for the same level of support for individuals who were having substance use disorder, mental health, and crises related to homelessness. So all of those became the eligibility criteria. Instead of just responding to them, handing them some pamphlets, getting them connected with resources and piecing out, we also typically, I will say, QRTs stay involved for about 45 to 90 days. So it's not like they just get in and get out. But we developed a program that we could stay involved indefinitely until someone's needs were met or they left the area. That to me is one of the highlights of what we have. The other part of that is the information sharing that we have between agency partners. We have 61 community partners who share information, and those partners are able to have a shared release, much like you might find in an interdisciplinary group in a hospital or hospice, which is kind of where I stole the idea from. And I'm able to have a confidentiality agreement from my officers and then able to share information to and from the partners that we work with. And that's all designed to support the folks that we serve.
And the officers, my entire career have said, you are the first people on the scene. You interact when people need services the most. And from the minute I arrived here, I have been so impressed with the care. And I say, it's not going above and beyond. It's doing what needs to be done. But compared to other departments, other cities and places, people say it is. So it is more than giving a pamphlet and sending people on their way. We are connecting and staying more than the 5 minutes. It is, these people need resources, help, and don't know where to go.
That's right. I would say a lot of our law enforcement officers feel the struggle too, because they also want to help. They also want to give people the resources, stop the root of the problem. But when you don't know where to go and you don't know the different agencies that we have and you're not really sure who to call, maybe it exists, but short of saying, have you called the Goodwill Inn? If you don't know the procedures for that, that'd be really difficult. And with 61 community partners, you can only imagine how many agencies there are in our community that may or may not have the contact information for the officers to even be able to do. So I think there's good intentions all around, but I do think that this provides a way of more access than some other police departments have.
I connected with you after spending 12 years in Colorado, where I was kicking down doors, begging, can we work together? This is what I did in Oakland and Wayne County for, years, decades. And I was, being ignored, rejected. We don't do that here. I mean, it was such a warm embrace, which I knew I would get when I came here, but it's exactly what is missing in so many places. There needs to be collaboration between first responders and mental health. How is that? Why is that more understood and accepted here?
I think that it's developed as a priority among various agencies. So there are grants now that require training on the law enforcement side of things. And then, there's also this focus on community policing and the relationships that we can develop with the community. Those two things together mean that everybody is in a space where they're trying to learn something new and they're trying to work together. So if we can remove the barriers from being able to work together, we're going to be able to do that better and serve more people and meet more needs.
How can we work with other agencies, departments outside of our communities and let people know what we do, how we can get the forces that are not quite on this page yet to look at what we're doing?
My recommendation for others, we have had some other communities that are interested in replicating what we do. And some of that's word of mouth. We have tri-weekly discussions where we talk about what we call potholes, because Michigan. And those potholes are gaps in service provisions between agencies, essentially being able to talk about what's not working and how can we fix it. I think that's the conversation that starts those relationships, to acknowledge that you didn't write this policy, but it's not working, right? Like, whatever the case is, this is still a problem for our folks. And consequently, law enforcement's running on that person more. The person's going to the hospital. They're sitting there. They're waiting there. It's a burden on staff. We are trying to get them community resources, but they may or may not want them. They may or may not be eligible. They may or may not know the process. I think being able to say what's not working and how can we fix it? And the we is huge, right? The idea of collaborating across agencies. I like to say that I offend everybody equally because I'm able to, have a little knowledge of like hospice, medical related things, a little bit of knowledge about law enforcement, a little bit of knowledge about substance use, a little bit of knowledge about mental health. And I think with that, I can know some of the things that aren't working, but not know them well enough to fix them. And so being able to acknowledge that there's a problem and reach out to the person who might be able to have ideas on how to fix that, especially if we can work together to get through some things, that's the conversation that starts it off.
When should somebody call 911 versus 988?
So I don't know that there's a clear delineation, but I have heard that 988 is not always 100% available in some communities. So if there's a mental health emergency, start with 988. That would be my recommendation. Start with 988. We also locally have the Grand Traverse Crisis and Access Center. That is a 24-hour facility, and that will take walk-ins. The phone number there is 231-213-1050. I think a lot of communities are starting to develop similar things. So knowing what resources are in your area and knowing who to call is crucial. 988 is where I would start if there's a mental health emergency. If that doesn't work for you, you can absolutely dial 911. But I think being able to have the resources in your area that meets the needs that you're calling about is crucial.
What happens if someone calls 911 for a mental health call? There are people afraid to do this. There is so much unknown, and we live in a world right now where we don't want to make things worse, and not calling can make things worse.
Absolutely. I'm just going to walk you through the process. When a 911 call comes out for a mental health emergency, our officers are dispatched to that call. If you have someone like a CMH, Community Mental Health Mobile Crisis Team, or you have a police social worker or similar that's involved with the department, even if they're not directly involved, but maybe they contract, those folks might respond together, but it might just be officers. Those officers are going to try to get to the root cause of the problem. And by that, I mean they are going to make sure that the scene is safe and try to, as quickly as possible, give that person the help that they can. Our officers are not social workers, but I would give many of them an honorary social work degree. They do a lot to really try to de-escalate the situation. There's something called crisis intervention training, which is really good for the officers who have that personality, who are naturally coming into a room, trying to slow things down, trying to say, we don't want to hurt you. We want to keep you safe and we want to get you the help that you need. So it's especially difficult if a petition cannot be filed. So in the cases where someone is a risk of harm, imminent risk of harm to themselves or others, a mental health petition can be filled out, and that can be filled out by anybody over the age of 18. And the person, if approved by the judge, and that process can take time, but not like hours. And so when that process is approved by the judge, then that person might be required to go to the hospital and get evaluated for treatment. However, if they're not an imminent risk to themselves or others, and they're just kind of having a hard time, there is a gray area, which is difficult. We live in gray areas naturally, but that can be one of them where, let's say, a family member was concerned about the behavior of someone in their family, but if the person is not imminently a danger to themselves or others and doesn't want to seek treatment, they're their own legal decision maker. And so they're not able to maybe get the help that could benefit them. Similarly, too, if the person goes to the hospital and then tests positive for intoxicants, then they may also, there's a mental health law code thing. I'm misquoting all of this. So this is very much with a grain of salt, right? I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just a general overview. But there's the mental health code, which essentially says, pick a box, substance use or mental health. It's not that simple, but that's the idea. And so if somebody goes seeking mental health treatment, but then tests positive for substances that they're using, then their rights cannot be taken away as a person And so really that limits the ability for the hospital to keep them against their will, if that makes any sense. So really from the start of a 911 call, the officers who are getting dispatched along with any emergency services or social workers or similar are really trying to expeditiously or as quickly as possible meet the needs of why that person called, get them the help that they need, and overall I would say just try to de-escalate the situation.
I tell every human I interact with, whether they're a client or not, if they are getting mental health support in some way, if you get pulled over, if you are interacting with the police in any way, your heart rate goes up. I don't care who you are. It's a little bit anxiety provoking. Let the officers know, because you might think you're calm, but you don't know how you're presenting to them. And they're coming up to a car on a freeway or to someone in a situation, they are also protecting themselves and others. And so 100% of the time, not 99.9, 100% of the time, the feedback I have gotten from my clients is that I have told them, let the officers know, let security, any type of responder know. If you are anxious, uncomfortable, let them know that you are in therapy, have a counselor, something. It disarms them. It puts them into that crisis de-escalation mode instead of whatever they think they're responding to. 100% of the time, the feedback I've gotten was changed everything. The entire situation, their tone of voice changed. Even if it didn't, their perception changed of how they were being treated, and their anxiety lowers, and the whole, that fight or flight.
I think authenticity is huge. I think that will benefit every interaction. The more that we can just be people with other people, there's naturally some rapport that gets built just with being able to be a little bit vulnerable. So I would say in every situation that is useful. I don't have tips, I guess, for specifically like encounters with law enforcement, but just try to be as kind as possible, try to be as slow as possible, try to be as just upfront and honest and genuine. I think that goes a long way with any interaction with any humans that we have. There's a huge perception, I think, from the community that officers maybe have an agenda. Having gone on some ride-alongs and seen some things, it's incredible the amount of safety and security and all these things that go into a scene like that. And so truly, essentially officers are trained for the worst case scenario in every scenario. And so if you are a person who kind of like thinks about the end of the world, right? Like very doomsday, that kind of colors your lens, I think, of how you see the world. And so it maybe changes how you interact day to day about certain things, because there's always sort of the back of your mind, something is rolling there, right? The same is true for an officer who will go to dinner with their partner and is sort of always thinking like, okay, there's an exit here. Like if something happens, how am I going to, that would be exhausting. Truly, that would be exhausting. So I think just give a little bit of the grace that we give to each other, to law enforcement as well, because it would be exhausting to constantly be living in a state of what if all the time.
And people who are anxious think it's visible to everyone, and you don't recognize how you are showing that anxiety. It's very, very common for people to appear aggressive and to be
Sure.
saying, I'm freaking out, but to think that they're saying, I'm freaking out, quiet, calm, and reserved. And so what an officer will see and what a person thinks they're saying are two very different things. So seeing an aggressive person who is actually an anxious person, I deal with that regularly. So letting someone know I have a therapist can change the dynamics pretty quickly. I want to ask about people who are dealing with somebody potentially having an overdose or someone under the influence, and we cannot call because we are under the influence or we are underage, and a life could be in danger. I have had so many people have positive outcomes when they call, but would never have done that if we didn't have this conversation.
Yeah, Good Samaritan law is what that's called. So in Michigan, the Good Samaritan law is designed, roughly speaking, to not have criminal charges against the person who is calling to get help for someone in an overdose situation. It's really beneficial to know that, especially with carrying naloxone or Narcan on hand. That's another one that you're not like you're not going to get in trouble if you have naloxone on you. It doesn't say that you are a person who uses drugs. It doesn't say that you whatever. I have a CPR breathing barrier thing on my keychain. It's the same sort of thing, right? The highest population of people who overdoses is 55 and older. I don't know that this conversation is what people expect. And so when I hear that, my mind goes to, what if my dad, who's kind of, whatever, getting up there in age a little bit. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening. But if he forgets that he takes his medicine, so he takes it twice. And so now all of a sudden you have somebody overdosing, and it's not a person who uses drugs, very much in quotes. It's not your typical whatever, right, that you might think of. I think that we can reduce stigma by changing the narrative and saying, why don't we just have universal precautions? Why don't we just carry naloxone with us? Because who knows what you're going to come across. And if my 18-month-old, who's the squirreliest little thing and can climb up on anything, takes something that she's not supposed to, you better believe I want that on hand. So I think the idea with the Good Samaritan law and the idea with naloxone is best practice. Let's save a life. Let's save a life first and worry about everything else that comes after that.
Is this the same for teenagers? If they are underage drinking, doing something, and they call, will they also be Good Samaritans?
So that's a good question. I would want to look more, I would want to talk to someone qualified because I am not an officer, I am a social worker. So I can't speak to, having paraphernalia around or blah, blah, blah. But I do know the idea with the Good Samaritan law is for an overdose, let's save a life first.
Always been the case with teenage clients. I'm drinking, Sam. I don't want to go home. Call me, not your parents. Let's deal with this. Never have I had a consequence. Everyone has always been rewarded for doing the right thing. And do we address the issue at a later point? And what's gone on? Yes, we're not going to ignore. But there are not arrests. There are not lectures. We are saving a life.
Save a life first.
What do people need to know about our community that we're not talking about with mental health crises? Because I feel like there's calls we hear about. We hear about the headlines. There are calls that never get talked about.
Yeah, it's difficult when there are complicated community calls because there's layers. For every event that you might have, there's always layers, right? Everyone has a different set of eyes in the room. There are different things that happen. There are things that aren't publicized. There are many things that law enforcement knows but isn't able to say. There's perceptions that change depending on who you are. So I think just taking every major event from the lens of this is what's been reported, and the most crucial information can often not be released because if something's an active investigation, it can't come out. So just knowing that every story that you hear is what's been able to be shared at this point.
Is there a surge of stories we're not hearing about? Are there things in the community we should be paying attention to that don't get headlines? Are we well aware of what we need to know?
I think the good stuff is what we don't hear about. I would say that there's a lot of good things that are happening in our community with our partners, the collaboration that goes together. We have like participant success stories that we report on every month. I think the good things don't make the news because they're not juicy and they're not cool. They are cool, but they're not like, cliquish. And so I think that going on a hunt for good news. My favorite thing in COVID was John Krasinski's Some Good News, because I think that was exactly what it was what I needed. I can tell you that. And just being able to hear some stories of positivity. So what I will tell, what I will encourage your listeners, seek joy. And it might even be something that you might be able to, whatever, show up to your local law enforcement and just be like, do you have any good news stories? Being able to what is the coolest thing that has happened to you this week? What is a good thing? Like I said, there's a huge focus on community policing. So some of the events like Coffee with a Cop, or they do like a Stuff a Blue Goose, which is the MSP drive for back to school supplies. Some of these events are law enforcement involved events that are really designed for community interaction. Seek good news, not just for law enforcement, but in your life. Seek good news. What's the best thing that's happened to you today or this week? Find joy. Joy is sometimes not readily available. Find it.
Coffee with a Cop is the next thing I was going to ask about. Is that monthly?
Yeah, so that is put on by Michigan State Police. You can follow them locally. I have a contact for that, so I'm happy to get you the next ones. I would say they occur approximately monthly. I don't think it's like the fourth Friday of the whatever. I don't think it's that regular, but I think they are planned pretty regularly at different spots in the community. We've started doing Cone with a Cop in the summer months, which I'm a big fan of. So, coffee, ice cream, there's just different events. Get involved and find what is near you.
If people don't know what that is, can you tell everyone a little bit more? Because I missed the last one and I was like, oh, I'm going to the next one for sure.
Yeah, Coffee with a Cop and similar events are opportunities for law enforcement and the community to engage in really positive ways. So really what that looks like is being able to, talk about nothing and be able to just interact with someone in a uniform. And the idea is stigma reduction, because just like the populations that we serve are stigmatized, so are law enforcement. And I think so being able to see someone in a blue uniform and be able to say oh yeah, they are also a person and they also have whatever, a dog, and they like to skateboard and whatever, right? Being able to just build community that way is the purpose of Coffee with a Cop and similar things.
We'll go let you be a mom. But we hear stories during our 3 feet of snow. There were stories of this officer on his day off, just happened to be over here helping this person plow. And it is a community of support and connection and helping each other out. And so I knew, but was so grateful to be warmly embraced. And any agencies of the 61 that you want to mention, to collect, it really truly is people helping people share resources. Yesterday there were 2 that it was immediately give my number. This is to save clients and humans struggling from having to do that themselves. We do the work for you so that you can deal with the stress and just focus on getting through it.
Absolutely. The premise of that is I'm one person, but if there's a team of 60, now I'm 60 people all of a sudden. And so being able to reach out. Our primary partners are Goodwill Northern Michigan, Safe Harbor, NMCAA, the Jubilee House that we have, which is Grace Episcopal Church. It's their day shelter. Addiction Treatment Services, Community Mental Health, the jail social worker and discharge planner. I was doing so well.
No, this is good.
There's 9. Traverse Health Clinic and Munson Family Practice. So those represent the 5 real sectors that we work with through the justice system, mental health, physical health, recovery or substance use, and housing or homelessness. So all of those sectors are the primary sectors that we are bringing together through this program. I would say if somebody's looking to do something like this in your community, look at who's closest to you. What agencies do you already have a good relationship with? Goodwill in Northern Michigan Addiction Treatment Services sat in on my interview, and that started a conversation about what if we did have a shared release? What if we did just between us? And so Now we've been able to open that up to all of our primary partners who get all of our information, and they're able to see who's a part of the program, sort of go through the nitty gritties. What does this person need? What can we coordinate for them, which occur every 3 weeks. And then our secondary partners, which include numerous agencies, Harm Reduction Michigan is one of those, the Traverse Area District Library, who provides literacy support, Disability Network, I could spend so much time. But being able to 217 recovery, like there's not just one agency that does the thing. And so being able to bring in the agencies when it makes sense to, like, please be a part of this. Let's have the person that we are supporting have a network of people. And so if Traverse Health Clinic isn't the right fit for you and you go with Munson Family Practice, that's great. If you want to instead go to Pace North, or if you want to Northern NMHSI, the health services, doing something like that, that's great, right? If you're not ready to, go to treatment or seek, substance use treatment, Harm Reduction Michigan's a great opportunity to get education on safe use. Community mental health is not the only mental health provider, and with Medicaid changes, their funding has been more, limited. And so how can we bring in more mental health partners? What can we do to ease the burden for people by using partners, is the whole kind of premise of that. So I would be happy to share a partner list with you, and be able for you to equally advertise all of them, because truly I would talk all day about the amazing partners that we have. There's some of them that are super niche, and I kind of love that because they are offering a part that nobody else does. There's others where you have options. It's a buffet. You can choose what works for you. I think in any community, being able to know who is the most receptive to conversations, and then also to just bring in more people as you can, that is key and that is crucial. And I hope that more people do that.
How can anyone watching, listening, support the Resilience Program?
There's a couple of ways. I would start with the consideration that trauma and grief impact everyone. I don't know that there's one person who wakes up in the beginning of the day and says, you know what I want to do today? I want to use drugs, right? And if they do, I don't think it comes from a place of wanting to do that because it's the best option. I think that there's a lot of trauma and a lot of grief that has led a person to do that. The same is true for somebody who hates their job. The same is true for someone who can't find housing. The same is true for someone who keeps losing their Social Security card and whatever. Like, that is not a conscious choice. You're not trying to actively lose any of those things. Instead, it is just a compound thing that happens with trauma and grief. So the first thing I think people can do to support the Resilience Program is give grace. The population that we serve are inherently resilient people. We are not giving them anything. Our whole goal is to remove barriers and try to support people that we're serving. So the first thing, just give grace. The second thing I think is learn about your community. Learn ways that you can support the partners that you have, the providers that we have in the community. We have amazing partners that we work with, and we could not do this I am one person. So we could not do this without the support of our partners. So I think getting to know the agencies that are a part of your community, getting the agency to know the agencies that are part of our community, if you feel so inclined, being able to look at that partner list and look at the amazing work that's being done and maybe see what can be replicated in your communities or how you can support those agencies. And then I guess third, the most impactful thing, we don't have enough housing. We don't have enough resources. There are what we call those potholes. There are gaps. Transportation is a huge gap. Funding is a huge gap. Knowing that those issues are there, and if there's a way to support those, if you know about grant opportunities, if there's some whatever information that you can share, that's just absolutely incredible. So I am grateful because we are internally funded through the city department, so the police department directly, and so there's two of us. There's myself and my coworker, Brad Neuter, who's an LPC and is a police support services worker with us. So we do not rely on additional funding, but we are constantly asking our partners for support in getting someone housed or getting someone to treatment or getting someone engaged. being aware of what community changes are happening. So like reductions in Medicaid, or the impact of some of the laws that might prevent someone with sexual harm charges from being able to access housing, things like that. Those, at the end of the day, all the people that I serve are people. So just knowing that, safety comes with housing. If we are worried about the people who don't have housing in our community, for example, housing makes those folks safer. Housing makes everybody a little safer. So just being aware of the barriers that are a part of the community and how we can work through those together. I'm happy to have a conversation about any of the potholes that we bring up, or any other ones. So give everybody a little bit of grace and understand that trauma and grief impact us all. Be able to reach out to your community and know what's going on, share funding opportunities, and know the barriers and how you can work through them.
Thank you so much for making time. Give your daughter snuggles. Final words, last thoughts for everyone.
I'm really grateful that you have this podcast. I'm really grateful that this is an opportunity for folks to be able to learn something about what it takes to be a person in this world. And so everybody deserves to have a space to call home. Everybody deserves to have enough money for food. One very interesting thing we will be doing, so we will have a Resilience Night event that's coming September 16th. It's Wednesday. I invite people to it. We'll have large draws like come see a fire truck in action and face painting and musicians in recovery. But we're also going to share some stories of people in recovery. We're going to talk about harm reduction and stigma reduction in kid specific ways. So it'll be a family friendly event. And more than anything else, we are just going to try to share a little bit of grace and understanding with folks. If you've never been to a re-entry simulation, the Grand Traverse Addiction Recovery Council and MORC put those on. It's very cool to interact with. Go to one. It will humble you. You can sit there in the chair and think you're going to have a plan and know what to do. And within like 10 minutes, you're already laid on what you're supposed to be doing, and you're supposed to be checking in with these people and getting food and all of these things that you have to accomplish. And it is difficult. And I think that is a way for you to truly understand how complicated our system really can be. So go to a reentry simulation. We will have one at our Resilience Night event. Please feel free to join us Wednesday, September 16th. And thank you very much for being able to, for me being able to be a part of this podcast.
Where is it at on Wednesday, September 16th?
Yeah, so it's going to be at the Traverse Area District Library in Hall Park, which is right behind it. So 610 Woodmere Avenue in Traverse City.
I will be there. Join us there. Thank you so much for making time. Until next time, everyone, always be ruthless.